Hi, and welcome to Historical Influence. Here, we explore amazing stories of people and events that shaped our history. Join us to learn, discover, and get inspired by the past in a fun and engaging way. The Age of Enlightenment, also often called the Age of Reason, was a major European cultural movement that flourished in Europe and Western civilization. It emerged in the late 17th century in Western Europe and reached its peak throughout the 18th century, with ideas spreading widely across Europe and into European colonies. European historians traditionally date the start of this period to the death of Louis XIV of France in 1715 and its end to the outbreak of the French Revolution in 1789. This intellectual and cultural shift was defined by a strong emphasis on reason, empirical evidence, and the scientific method. The core ideals promoted by Enlightenment thinkers included individual liberty, religious tolerance, progress, and natural rights. They passionately advocated for principles such as constitutional government and the separation of church and state. The Enlightenment did not appear out of thin air. It built upon the intellectual groundwork of the scientific revolution of the 16th and 17th centuries. This earlier revolution established new methods of empirical inquiry through the work of figures such as Isaac Newton and Francis Bacon. The philosophical foundations for the Enlightenment were laid by thinkers like René Descartes, Thomas Hobbes, Baruch Spinoza, and John Locke. Descartes' Discourse on the Method, 1637, featuring his dictum, cogito ergo sum, or I think, therefore I am, is sometimes cited as the beginning of the period, as it emphasized systematic doubt over external authority. Bacon's empiricism and Descartes' rationalist philosophy were essential starting points for Enlightenment thought. These philosophical discussions quickly diverged into two main camps. The moderate Enlightenment, following figures like Locke and Descartes, sought to reconcile reform with traditional systems of faith and power, often embracing deistic views. In contrast, the radical Enlightenment, inspired by the philosophy of Spinoza, was far more uncompromising. It advocated for democracy, individual liberty, freedom of expression, and the total eradication of religious authority. This radical tendency separated the basis of morality entirely from theology. Both moderate and radical lines of thought were later opposed by the conservative counter-Enlightenment. The central political doctrines of the Age of Enlightenment contrasted sharply with absolute monarchy and religious persecution. These key doctrines included individual liberty, representative government, the rule of law, and religious freedom. One of the most influential thinkers was John Locke. He based his philosophy on the social contract theory, arguing that government authority is limited and requires the consent of the governed. Locke famously stated that individuals possess inherent natural rights, including the right to life, liberty, and property, the latter derived from labor. Locke's theory heavily influenced documents such as the U.S. Declaration of Independence and the French Declaration of the Rights of Man. Other critical political thinkers included Montesquieu, who introduced the influential concept of the separation of powers in government, which was enthusiastically adopted by the authors of the United States Constitution. Jean-Jacques Rousseau, also a social contract theorist, focused on achieving unity while simultaneously preserving individual freedom through the sovereignty of the general will. Meanwhile, in the realm of social justice, the Italian jurist and philosopher Cesare Beccaria became one of the greatest Enlightenment writers. His masterpiece, On Crimes and Punishment, 1764, provided a thorough treatise on criminal justice, becoming a foundational work in penology and criminology. Beccaria's theories were based on three tenets: free will, rational manner, and manipulability. He argued that crime becomes an illogical choice if the punishment outweighs the benefits, and his treatise condemned both torture and the death penalty. Finally, Voltaire, François-Marie Arouet, argued for a society based on reason rather than faith and Catholic doctrine. He passionately advocated for religious tolerance, urging people to regard all men as their brothers, whether Turk, Chinaman, Jew, or Siamese. The ideas generated by these philosophers spread rapidly due to new institutions and a blossoming print culture. These new venues collectively formed the public sphere. A highly important venue was the salon, which functioned as the principal social institution of the Republic of Letters. The salonières, or women who hosted these gatherings, such as Marie-Thérèse Rodin-Joffrin, played a vital role in guiding intellectual discourse. Salons were considered the civil working spaces for the project of enlightenment. Equally significant were the coffee houses, which provided a unique, largely egalitarian environment for people from diverse backgrounds, from aristocrats to artisans, to gather, read, and share ideas. Nobles often criticized coffee houses out of fear that this mixing of classes might disregard traditional titles and privileges. Coffee houses were centers of free thinking and a catalyst for early journalism. For instance, the famous Café Procope in Paris, established in 1686, was where Denis Diderot and Jean-Laurent D'Alembert decided to create the Encyclopédie. The concept of the Republic of Letters, coined by Pierre Bayle in 1664, encapsulated this vision: an international, egalitarian realm governed by knowledge, independent of state power, and supporting the free public examination of questions regarding religion or legislation.
One of the key features of the social enlightenment was the increased consumption of all forms of reading material, books, pamphlets, and journals, facilitated by developments in the Industrial Revolution that lowered printing prices. Literacy rates subsequently doubled in places like France over the course of the 18th century. The most potent publishing effort was the monumental Encyclopedia. Published between 1751 and 1772 in 35 volumes, it was compiled by Diderot, Jean-Laurent D'Alembert, and a team of 150 contributors. The encyclopedia was instrumental in spreading Enlightenment ideas across Europe and beyond. The explicit goal of this massive universal encyclopedia was to systematically record all human knowledge. As outlined in D'Alembert's preliminary discourse, the work sought to present the order and connection of the parts of human knowledge across both liberal and mechanical arts and sciences. The structure of the work, known as the figurative system of human knowledge, organized knowledge into three main branches: memory, reason, and imagination. This structure reflected the Enlightenment's increasing secularization, notably by placing theology in a peripheral branch, neighboring black magic. The availability of cheaper editions, quarto and octavo, after 1777, made the encyclopedia accessible to a wider, non-elite audience, with an estimated 25,000 copies circulating before the French Revolution. Thus, the encyclopedia became a powerful emblem of the transmission of scientific and Enlightenment education.
The rise of reason inevitably led to conflict with traditional authorities, particularly organized religion and monarchy. Enlightenment scholars sought to limit the political power of religion to prevent future intolerant religious wars. New religious ideas included deism,
the simple belief in a God the Creator, relying solely on personal reason without reference to the Bible or miracles. While atheism was discussed, few enlightened intellectuals were true atheists. Most were critics of orthodox belief, leaning instead toward skepticism or deism. However, many, like Voltaire, worried that lacking a belief in a punishing God would undermine the moral order of society. A major political battle involved the concept of the separation of church and state, a concept championed by the radical Enlightenment. John Locke is often credited with this idea, arguing that government lacked authority over individual conscience, which rational people could not surrender. These views were highly influential in the American colonies, leading figures like Thomas Jefferson to call for a wall of separation between church and state at the federal level. Not all Enlightenment figures were proponents of democracy. Many, including Voltaire, despised democracy and looked instead to absolute monarchs to enact necessary reforms, a system known to historians as enlightened absolutism. Rulers such as Frederick the Great of Prussia, Catherine the Great of Russia, and Joseph II of Austria were considered enlightened despots who tried to apply Enlightenment thought to governance. Frederick the Great explicitly stated his primary occupation was to combat ignorance and prejudice, to enlighten minds, cultivate morality, and to make people as happy as it suits human nature. However, the Enlightenment faced strong contemporary criticism, later termed the Counter-Enlightenment. Detractors accused the movement of relying on shallow rationalism and naive optimism. Romantic philosophers argued that the movement mistakenly disregarded the essential societal bonds of history, myth, faith, and tradition.
The Enlightenment is widely recognized as the foundation of modern Western political culture, leading to political modernization by introducing democratic values and liberal democracies. The philosophical theories of the philosophers directly translated into political upheaval. The American Revolution, 1765 to 1783, was intrinsically linked to Enlightenment ideals. Key American figures, including Thomas Jefferson, Benjamin Franklin, and James Madison, closely followed European ideas. Jefferson incorporated Enlightenment ideals into the Declaration of Independence, and Madison incorporated them into the U.S. Constitution. The revolution centered on rejecting the absolute monarchy and the principle of divine right to rule in favor of governments that required the consent of the governed and protected natural rights. The French Revolution, 1789 to 1799, was similarly influenced. The spread of Enlightenment ideas undermined the monarchy's authority and contributed to the dismantling of the Ancien regime. Though the philosophers were not always revolutionaries, their critique of the existing order was critical in shaping the revolutionary mindset. Alexis de Tocqueville suggested the revolution was the inevitable outcome of the radical opposition that developed between the monarchy and the men of letters of the Enlightenment. The Enlightenment's global reach was evident in the Haitian Revolution, 1791 to 1804. Led by figures like Toussaint Louverture, the revolution combined Enlightenment critiques of European colonialism with the experiences and traditions of enslaved people in Haiti. This ultimately forced the French National Convention to abolish slavery in 1794.
The Enlightenment's legacy continues to shape the modern world. Its principles are hailed as the source of freedom of thought, religious tolerance, and political liberty. Politically, the core doctrines of the Enlightenment paved the way for modern, liberal democracies.
The ideas of John Locke concerning individual conscience and the social contract profoundly influenced the drafting of the United States Constitution. Furthermore, Cesare Beccaria's treatise on crimes and punishments influenced rights listed in the U.S. Constitution and the Bill of Rights, and continues to impact modern policies like truth in sentencing and the abolishment of the death penalty in some U.S. states. Intellectual movements such as liberalism and socialism trace their heritage directly back to the Enlightenment. Liberalism, for example, lists the Age of Enlightenment as a key historical event alongside the Atlantic revolutions. Globally, the Enlightenment proved to be a process of adaptation rather than just diffusion. The ideas were invoked by historical actors around the world for their own specific purposes. For instance, in 19th century Egypt, intellectual Rifa al-Tahtawi oversaw the publication of hundreds of European works in Arabic, expanding the Enlightenment into Islamic modernism. Ultimately, the Age of Enlightenment represents the ongoing liberation of the human mind from a dogmatic state of ignorance.
Share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories that shaped our world.